idea of like, well, if we're this very small thing in this huge vast openness of nothing, of like dark matter and shit, like it's very disempowering to people, and you could better control the population if you got people to believe in basically like evolutionism, and that we like sprung from like a single cell algae, so it's interesting.
Joe Rogan seems to believe that we were all monkeys that some of us got a hold of some magic mushrooms and all of a sudden decided how to make fire.
Well, that's Terence McKenna. That's Terence McKenna's theory, actually.
Yeah, I wasn't
And
saying it was
it
Joe
kind
Rogan. I just said he believes
kind
it.
of makes sense. It kind of makes sense, though. Not the animal, not the monkey stuff that we come from monkeys, but the magic mushroom stuff is
Yeah,
quite.
absolutely. Did you know that mushroom spores can withstand space or a
Yep.
vacuum?
Yep.
So
Spores.
literally, like, intelligence could have been seeded here in that sense.
Exactly. A lot of life gets seeded here in the beginning, also by meteorites with bacteria on it, and then they fall to Earth, and then they start growing and stuff like that. That's also one story. Hydra. Mm.
Well, do me a favor, all you guys, go to my profile and go watch the video that I have listed in my bio, and then come back to me and talk about flat Earth.
Well, I would be really happy to talk about flat Earth if we could actually take some action on it. Hire a plane, fly over the south, fly over the Antarctic.
You
Stuff like
can't.
that.
You'll get shot down. You can't go
Yeah, I
past
know.
the ice wall.
You can't even go past the small little peninsula that hangs, is further south from Chile. They don't take you anywhere besides that.
Look,
So,
there's two ways we can settle this discussion. In the end, my argument is it doesn't even matter what shape the Earth is. It could be a square, it could be a triangle. I mean, I think the most important thing is how we treat Earth.
well,
And
it does
secondly,
matter because if there is other extra territory past the ice wall, and we're talking lots of other territories, maybe with different beings, maybe different elements, different, there's more land, so there's no like disparity, like bountiful lands that you'd never have a problem with energy, you'd never have a problem with food or land. It's a big deal. It's the whole game.
yeah,
Be
I
Hedronian.
understand that.
Let's be Hedronian. Would it be called intronauts instead of astronauts? We could be Hedronian intronauts, and we all save up for some crazy fucking missile that we get on, and we just blast through past that fucking ice wall.
Well, I've been researching that, and apparently the ice wall has some kind of ice that it doesn't melt even if you hold a flame to it, something like that. It's kind of a special ice or something.
Actually, saying break through the ice wall, like fly over it, but just fly so quick. Yeah, it's weird to me that all these nations that are apparently at war with each other, or like have all these crazy interrelations, like that can't get along. They're getting along down in Antarctica,
Of
and
course, yeah.
they're all in this treaty together. And like, there's that video of Admiral Byrd that apparently went past it before, kind of like the presence was so strong there, and talks about some crazy shit. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, I guess I'm kind of on the fence. I'm kind of like, well, yeah, well, what if it is, or what if it isn't? And I'm like, well,
No, I think Executioner's on the right track. If you really want to debunk flat Earth, you got to study geology. The founder of geology his like the fundamental theory of geology is that everything that's happening right now has happened before, and that's all you need to know. And so when you see a mudslide, you're seeing deposits being formed, and you can assume that that has happened for 5 billion years, and then you can assume like what happens to a mudslide after it's been under the earth for 5 billion years. Um, like, does it turn into quartz or something? I don't even fucking remember, but every rock that has been formed, you can pick up a rock on the street, in a mountain, and you can study geology and find out how this rock was formed just by looking at it. Like, is it from a volcano? Is it from a underneath the earth, just molten? Is it from a, a river that broke down a mountain? Like, geology explains all that shit.
Well, that was my second argument. Either we get a plane and we fly over the Antarctic, or we get a rocket and we blast off into space. And then we can check out for ourselves. Because a lot of people are saying, like, yeah, but there's no satellites whatsoever. Elon Musk and all the Starlink shit. It's not true. The highest that's possible to go is like with a weather balloon and stuff like that. I don't know, man.
With drone technology, battery technology, we'll be able to do privately funded drones and just like try to make them small enough to where they can go undetectable, like past.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Didn't Jeff Bezos go to space allegedly? I think they filmed
Oh,
that.
allegedly he went much further than that. Elon Musk first went to, not Elon, but apparently he didn't go, but apparently he did go, and he went to space, for example. And apparently after that, no, Richard Branson did it, and then Bezos did it. And apparently they didn't just go to space and come back. Apparently they went to the moon of Ganymede to have a special meeting with the secret space the secret space program, and they had a meeting there. Crazy stuff. You can go down the rabbit hole so far. No, I think that once in meditation, I was meditating and I was asking, how far is it really necessary that we reach for the stars and become Star Trek people? And then the answer that I got was, if you remove a physical body far enough from the earth, it's like an umbilical cord that gets cut and then you're finished. That was my answer that I got. I don't know how true it is. I don't know how to check it, but that was the answer I got.
I mean, I mean, if your physiology suggests that you're a product of your own environment, then leaving the environment in which you're able to survive in would cut your survivability down almost 100%.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
A human body. And there have been stories that when you go into space, you don't really actually need a spacesuit to walk on the moon. You just have to have a little bit of weight on for the gravity and maybe a little bit of oxygen, just a slightly bit of oxygen. But apparently, it's been proven that on the moon, there's like clouds and there's like seasonal plant growth and stuff like that. So actually, the moon is terraforming slowly. That was interesting to hear.
I also heard that
They take all the moon landings, though.
the moon is also hollow, and it is a meeting place for all terrestrial being and out of terrestrial beings.
Yeah. The moon is hollow and it's a construct. It was a planet, but it was hollowed out, and now aliens and stuff live in that. And there's like human. Oh yeah, the first time humans went to the moon, apparently the Americans were so arrogant they started playing golf on the moon, and the Russians and all the other people and the aliens there were so irritated and offended that they kicked them off the moon.
God, that's so obnoxious playing golf. Like it's just too loud. It's so, you know, I don't know what's obnoxious about golf. Like,
It's just a story. I don't know how true. No, but there seems to be some footage of Armstrong and Aldrin when they went to the moon, that they found like huge pillars that belonging to an ancient temple, and then you can actually see the black and white footage of them walking around the pillars. It's like huge pillars. That was really that really caught my eye, but who knows how fake it is or not, you know. But the thing that intrigued me is Antarctica, you know, when a lot of politicians started going there a few years back, and then Buzz Aldrin also went there to Antarctic, and then he had to be rushed back to a hospital because he got a heart attack for what he experienced there or something. That was crazy. Everyone in the elites, sooner or later, they travel to the moon, Antarctica. That's why.
Apparently, those pillars were like over 200 foot tall, like insanely huge.
Yeah, they were insanely huge and insanely not in proportion to a human body, you know, like way bigger, way bigger.
Yeah, I think
Like
that there's some video evidence um, in 2016 or some shit like that.
it's around the time that I saw it, I think, yeah. Yeah. But again, you know, the most important thing is your own body, your own consciousness, realizing that all of consciousness, all of creation is happening on the inside of itself and not on the outside. You know, all creation happens within itself, and then all of anything you want to have, yeah, in fundamentally, you can access everything from inside your body. It's not necessary to keep to project the attention outside everywhere, you know. There is no, if you go deep enough, you find out there is no outside. It's it goes right past duality thought, you know, duality think.
Yeah, I think finding like pyramid type structures on the moon is a little more interesting than pillars, because the pillars look, I mean, they're not like obelisk, right? Like very clean cut type things. But having pyramid type structures is not, it's not natural for those types of things to form. Mounds, rounded surfaces are natural types of things to have happen.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that because Jason from Archaics, in the Archaics videos, he talks about how the word pillar was actually a substitute word for the tree of life, and that is actually a substitute for the pyramid. So when you see the word pillar in the ancient scriptures, that it actually refers to the pyramid. Thought that was really
That was,
cool.
I believe, with those pillars that, like what you're speaking about on the moon, um, that very close to those two pillars are pyramid type structures that are way bigger than than the pillars.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen much pyramids on the moon. We know about the pyramid on Mars and the face on Mars and everything. On the moon, I haven't really seen pyramids, but they probably are.
I don't know. I've never been there.
No, me neither. But it's rational, you know. It's rational to think that if a civilization was able to reach other planets, then building a pyramid is very obvious, a very obvious thing to do. It's called planet taming. Because the pyramid it's not put in a it's put in a specific place. It's not put in a random place.
What if the Earth is going through multiple cycles of building technologies that would be to the same equivalent as what we have today, maybe even further, far that it was its own destruction in the end result and pushed everybody back to like what was being spoken earlier about the hunter-gatherer period
Yes, that's what
again?
Archaics, the Jason Archaics dude also talks about. He talks about cataclysms like the Great Flood, and he talks about that in history, apparently it happened at least three times as big as the Great Flood from the Bible. But before that, there were also like one or two, that the flood that we know of from the Bible is the last one. And then every time that civilization gets reset back to the Stone Age, kind of. And it happened a few
I
times.
don't think it is the last one. I think the next one is cleansing by fire.
Well, that's another thing. The Vatican abolished the fire. How do you call it? Purgatory? No. Per. What's the name? You know, the Lake of Fire. The Vatican actually abolished it. They said it doesn't exist anymore. The Ring of Fire, the fire you go through after death, to cleanse. That's crazy. That was a crazy announcement. I mean, it was on the radio. I mean,
But
that was
if there was a reset event, which is very interesting to think about, by the way. But if there was, wouldn't there be some sort of resemblance of technology stored deep under the ground or in the
exactly,
oceans? This is an
exactly.
interesting question.
Yes, yes. Jason from Archaic, he's a chronologist, and he actually talks about this. He says that in the time of the Egyptians and before that, actually, civilization went to a very high standard in technology. Also, they had like tablets and stuff and computers and things like that, and they sequestered it deep inside the earth, where they also were hiding from the big cataclysms. And then after a few years, when the civilization on the surface regains regains civilization, regains population and stuff, that they come back out of the caves and out of the mountains, and then they start to divulge the information. And we can actually see in history that at a certain moment there was an explosion of culture and knowledge and technology and all that stuff. It apparently came out of nowhere, all across the earth, around the same time periods. It's really interesting. Um, but he also talks about the vapor canopy, and that was really interesting. That's really interesting because the flat Earth also talk about the firmament, but in previous iterations of the Bible, or in the Bible, there's also a talk about, well, once upon a time there was a firmament, but Jason talks about the vapor canopy. That's actually the same thing. He's referring to the same thing, that around the Earth was a big fog, a big layer of water that actually uh, rained down every evening like a mist. And it was so thick that in the daytime it wasn't, the light never came through clearly as we know now today. And the people, it was like a temperate climate all around the earth, like a tropical kind of thing, much more oxygen, so much bigger plants and animals and stuff. And that's at night when the mist fell on the earth, then space became very clear to see the stars. But because there was the water layer, the water layer in the atmosphere, that it acted like a sort of a lens. So, and that could explain why ancient people that we know of still from today, they have knowledge of distant stars that are light years away, but they didn't have telescopes or anything. But it could actually be because of the vapor canopy that they were able to see much further into space. at night. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's really interesting theory.
Dude, where was your accent from? Were you the guy from Sweden or Norway or something?
Yeah, yeah, around there. I'm in the
Oh, so
vicinity of.
to prata svenska?
No, 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 no. No, ik spreek Nederlands
Ah, Netherlands. Okay.
en Frans, English.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I know my English is not so. My sentence construction is not so good today.
That's good, man. The Netherlandish people, they speak English pretty well.
It's a really interesting theory, with the vapor canopy, because after a while, even in the Indian, the Native American stories uh, that are told, you can actually decipher that the vapor canopy was there because, according to their stories, they have stories that talk about the birthing of the sun. Because in the vapor canopy, apparently, even in the daytime, it was kind of dark, kind of dusk, and at a certain moment, the vapor canopy fell, and and then the whole atmosphere of the Earth changed completely, completely. And he also was talking about when the vapor canopy was there, that our DNA was very different, and it made humans able to become giants, really, really big giants, and then their offspring were a little bit smaller because the vapor canopy fell. Their offspring were a little bit smaller, but still giant. And that's where we get the images from Egypt from the huge statues and all that. Apparently, yeah, people say sometimes that they were uh, live representations, and that I mean it's so interesting, and that's because even in the beginning, people worship volcanoes like Solomon and stuff like that. Not him, but in the beginning, people worshipped volcanoes because of the power, and the light and the heat and stuff that it gave during the night. We didn't have fire, sustainable fire. We had to, hug together in the night, not be eaten by other animals. And then afterwards, we started worshiping the moon. First, people started worshiping volcanoes, then the moon, and then when the vapor canopy fell, the sun. So the sun worship came last, actually. That's also very interesting.
It baffles my mind how they cut those stones, those huge, gigantic stones, that they built the pyramids with, because they cut with such precision that and they weigh so much, you know. And there's also another thing. I don't know if you heard about the guy called Randall Carlson. Um, he has like
Name rings a bell.
a nice duo with Graham Hancock, The Fingerprints of the
Yeah,
Gods. Have you ever read that book?
no, no.
So he was talking about how those pyramids many years ago, like he dates those pyramids back 10,000 years or something like that. And apparently back then that geographical region of Egypt was actually a jungle, so it was not a desert like it is today. And the pyramids, they had like a very nice coating of something called limestone or something like that. And
Yes,
it's
white.
like a very shiny,
Yep.
beautiful reflection that it gives from the sun. But over time, when people came over there, they started, I don't remember specifically which powers that came over there, they started stealing the limestone and bringing it to their own countries. I don't know what they did with it, but it's
No,
an interesting
Egypt.
fact.
Actually, the Cairo, the city right next to the pyramids, was actually start the roads and stuff, and the first buildings that were built were actually from the limestone and stones from the pyramid site,
Mm,
because that construction in
interesting.
Cairo. Yeah. But imagine, even apparently the pyramid in Egypt was submerged in water for like 300 years, and then people could go in a boat, but still the outside was the white limestone, and people could go there but could not climb the pyramid. They could go there, they could pass with the boat, but they could not climb it. or easily climb it. That's really interesting because normally at the top of the pyramid you have a capstone, and apparently the sides of the pyramid were limestone, but the capstone was completely golden, and somehow it got removed. And it is said that when prophecy fulfills that the capstone will be replaced or something, that will be an interesting day. Imagine just seeing a spaceship descending down and then a golden capstone come returning to the top of the pyramid. That would be crazy. That would be crazy day.
Yeah. Here's a. I just had to run away for a second. Just kind of bring us back to being humble, or I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, but I just had a friend call me. He just found out stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
That's not a nice message.
You
It's
know,
I hope, yeah, I hope he does well.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday from 100plus.com, and they specialize in um it's not cheap. I think you pay like $20,000, and then they do all kinds of tests like full body scan, take a ton of your blood, they look at your genome, um, and they try to figure out how to make your life, how to try to make you live to 100. And the guy told me that he the most common thing they save people from is pancreatic cancer and prostate cancer, and they save like one or two people a day.
And it's really stupid because medicine is here, the technology is here to cure cancer and all that stuff, and AIDS and everything.
Yeah, that's what one of the things we are talking about is how um he's on the same page that the medical system is sick care. Like when you get sick, you um then you go to the doctor. There's no preventative care, which is really important. Like you need to catch it early. They usually catch things at like stage 1 or 2 versus when you have symptoms, it's too late.
Yeah, this
Uh,
my
it's a
friend.
bit your own.
Thank you for that, executioner. And yeah, my friend, he lived or he lives really healthfully. So I just wonder, what it's about. But
Uh,
yeah,
spiritually cancer means that the cell is very, very devoid of information. So cancer is an extremely empty cell in terms of information, a healthy information. So the best thing I could say is you can always copy energetically the information from healthy cells or one healthy cell, and then you just energetically, with your intention and intense focus, you just keep making a copy of energetically of a healthy cell, and you put it in, you just direct it to the cells that are in need of the information.
And is are they gonna do treatment, or are they just like
You have your own treatment. Your voice is one of the most healing instruments that you have at your disposition for your own body. So you also know which tones, which musical tones that are most attractive to you in this moment, and those are the tones for you to use to balance all kinds of stuff out.
yeah, I mean, Rich, are they going to do treatment, or is it
yeah. Basically, he started
Sorry.
chemo, and then I think he stopped it, and now he's doing full natural. In particular, he said they're doing like mistletoe, some sort of
Yes.
country
Yes.
is using mistletoe like injected into it and
Yes.
literally
Well,
just
if
like
you
destroying it
you should
instantly.
tell him about Dr. Long. Um, he's he studies fasting, and one of the things he found is that chemo is as effective as a 5 day fast. And if you do chemo and a 5 day fast, it's 4 times as effective um, as just chemo. But you should but if you just look up on YouTube, where did he drop? He dropped. Hope I didn't make him mad.
I think so. I don't believe that would be the case.
Yeah, maybe he picked up somebody called him.
Yeah. He's pretty receptive to all sorts of thoughts of mentality. I don't see him as being one to be like, throw his hands in the air and be like, oh, I'm done with everything. Fuck these guys. You guys are the best group I've ever had. What do you mean? I can't. I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see him being like that.
But that happens to me a lot because I like try to help everybody, and sometimes when you try to help somebody, they get mad because they're like, "You don't know better than me," or like, I don't know.
Oh, dude, my old lady has multiple sclerosis, and according to her, she is the lead most expert on it. And I have every once in a while, spoken in public, and I'll get all sorts of people DMs that tell me, look at this and look at that and look at all these things. And if I was to bring any of it to her, she'd be like, yep, I already know about that. That's bullshit. And she'll go into a whole thing. It's like talking to a group of you guys, but just all bundled into her.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean that's true. I've had a spinal fluid leak, and I'm an expert now on spinal fluid leaks, and it's I think it's that way that I saw it in one of these Facebook groups just recently. They said like, why doesn't any of the doctors treat us like we're the experts? Because we are the experts. Like, the general physician doesn't do a deep dive like somebody who actually has the sickness. Like their life depends on it. So they're gonna do all the fucking research they can, more than any doctor can. And the doctor doesn't even have time. He's seeing patients. Like, but yeah.
Doctors, more or less, in my opinion, they just verify whether what you're saying is true or not. Like every time that my woman has an MS relapse, she knows that her arm is going numb. She can only, there's times where she's had
Yeah.
lost in a complete eye. It's like, and then when she goes there, like, we need to have 6 $3,000 MRIs, and you're going to have to figure out how to pay that. On top of the fact that your arm is numb, your feet are numb, you can't see out of your eye, we're going to add some more stress to you because we want verification before we give you anabolic steroids or some shit like this.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
Yeah. Yep. And then of course they do this testing and they're like, well, you're right. And she's like, no shit, dumbass. You're the brain surgeon or the neurologist, and I'm the expert, right? Is what she would say. So, but I mean, I guess they just need that verification because there's so many people out there that are, oh fuck, what do you call those people that they just hear about something and they think that they have it?
Hypochondriac.
Yeah, they think everybody's hypochondriac. Doctors do.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I mean, it sucks, but that's just the way it is. Can't really blame the doctors necessarily because it's just kind of the situation that we put ourselves in for the genuine people and the disingenuine people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think for a doctor, my best reason to go to the doctor is, I just got ran over by a train. Like that's my number one reason I would ever see a doctor. Like if you're bleeding to death, they could probably help you.
Yeah, if you broke a bone or something, it's good.
I will say this, guys, like Rich just had something that is probably affecting him right now, psychologically and emotionally, since this is a friend of his. And he found this information out, and I'm assuming because he wasn't gone very long, that instead of reaching out to his what we would consider his closest people, right? Like calling other people, family, other friends, and da 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 da. Where did he come to? He came to us, and he came to us to like, like tell us about it and like stuff that he's involved in and stuff like that. Like, I find that like incredibly powerful, right? That's kind of amazing, really. And then now I'm assuming that that's what he's doing now is he's probably getting a hold of other people and contacting them and seeing how they're doing and seeing what he can do and actually being effective. Because I see him as being one of those. I think that Rich has probably he's one of those fortunate people that has the capabilities and has more than what he needs, and he's more than helpful in all sorts of ways. So yeah, I'm not really a religious man, but it makes me want to like put out some sort of energetic vibe, good vibes towards this gentleman that I don't even know, right? Put it into the ether and help out in any way I can.
Well, you can send him energy, and he has to decide for himself how he's going to use it. You know, he's going to use it to heal himself and stay, or he's going to use it to pass on. That's the most loving thing you can do.
Yeah, whatever helpful is what I would like to do.
Yep. Yeah, my neighbor also went through chemo, and prior to that, she also had the mistletoe treatment. She's still here. She finished the treatment and she's sweating it all out. So what I would advise is also when you get chemo is to afterwards sweat like a yeah, as much as you can to get it out of your system as fast as possible.
I wanted you to think harder on your analogy because I think it probably would have been funny. Maybe sweat like a wet.
Yeah, I wanted to say pig, but sweat like a waterfall, sweat like a cold bottle coming out of the fridge.
Sometimes I eat red meat so fast that I get the meat sweats.
Meat sweats.
Have you ever heard of
Hmm.
that?
Never heard of that before. Meat sweats.
And I'm like 6 foot tall and like maybe 185 pounds soaking wet. So it wouldn't make sense to get the meat sweats like a fat guy, right? But yeah, for sure, especially if you put some pepper on it.
Oh, I feel okay now. I understand. Of course. No, a good thing that I can tell people also is to every day you can get empty capsules from the pharmacy, just 1 gram empty capsules, and then you fill them up with curcumin and black pepper, or you can just take your dried herbs that you put on your meat and your eggs and whatever, oregano and thyme and all these herbs. You just fill them up in the empty capsule, and you just take them every day, one gram. Hup, the herbs don't get burnt. They just dry. They were just dried, and it really works. It really, really works. From the Ayurveda, I know that herbs are actually the food for our nervous system, and that the normal foods that we eat, like meat and vegetables and stuff, those are the foods for our muscles and tendons and everything. But for our nervous system and for
That's
our
true.
hormonal system, it's very important to eat herbs. So
Yeah.
for a
But
long time now, I just go 1 gram of curcuma with black pepper because it activates a lot of stuff in the curcuma, and it really helps to get rid
it's
of
called
symptoms.
an acre of
Curcuma,
turmeric about 5 years ago. I love my curcumin turmeric.
yeah,
Um,
turmeric, yeah.
I think one of the most overlooked systems of the body is the lymph system. We actually have more fluid, I think 3 times more lymph fluid than we do blood.
Yo, did your mic just cut off, or is it just me?
Mhm. Yeah, he's his
The
phone
music
call
again.
again.
It's
Someone
getting
called it
again.
DJ. Wicca.
But yeah, he was talking about the lymph system. I agree with that. And the lymph system is like your sewage system for the body.
Not only that, the lymph system is also the transportation system for your hormones, and the lymph system is also embedded within the muscles. So that's why you need to exercise, so the glands of your hormonal system get squished, and then they
Yeah,
release
stimulated.
hormonal fluids. Then they release hormonal fluids, and it's very important.
She had a
But I don't.
swollen lymph node a few months back, and that was like not fun. Very disconcerting. Not to mention like uncomfortable.
Isn't that the first sign of infection? Swollen lymph nodes?
There's like all kinds of bad signs. I went like so. You guys were talking about going to the doctor earlier. There's not much that like makes me want to go to the doctor, but in this situation, I was like, not only was I like, I'm gonna go to the doctor. I'm like, yo, are you guys gonna like call me back and let me know if I can go yet? Like I was whatever, but yeah.
Mhm.
The floor is yours, Rich, since you were cut off on your lymph node thing.
Oh, thank you, Executioner. Yeah, I was just talking about the lymph system is like the most overlooked system in the human body, and in fact, like if you were to believe that maybe we should have more frugivore tendencies, that tends to uh, uh, intake more alkaline food in the form of mostly fruit and green leaves. Not necessarily no meat, because even like chimps and stuff, they'll eat meat occasionally. But like when you do that, what happens is the alkaline food doesn't have a waste that's left over as a residue after it's burned as fuel in our body, and it's those residues that tend to clog the lymph system in the body, and the lymph system is like what nourishes all our organs and our tissues. So yeah, like going back to the immortal cell idea, that you mentioned, Hex Photon, about how like basically the cell is immortal, and as long as you feed it with the proper minerals, like mineral re-nourishing and minerals, then essentially like we can live to be 900 years old like the original humans.
Yeah, I'm also I totally agree. The body is perfectly able to live for at least 1,000 years in the proper conditions. You know, atmosphere, food, soil, all these things. Education, very important. How your consciousness vibrates. But it's called this time is called Kali Yuga for a reason. It's the last age, and it's the age of degeneration. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah.
But yeah, overall, if you look at it like that, everything that happens on a big scale usually also have the same fundamental mechanics on a smaller scale. So, for example, when you eat food, if you eat poor food, bad food, you're gonna feel bad. If you eat good food, you're gonna feel good. And your cells, they also consume. So if you give them good stuff, they're gonna feel good. If you give them bad stuff, they're gonna feel bad. If you give them enough bad stuff, then eventually they're gonna die, become sick, and then will die. It's a long process like that.
Essentially, we don't need as much food as we're eating, and I think that like all the life extension specialists, like studies and stuff, has shown that like calorie restriction is the number one way to increase someone's length of their life, and of course fasting and all this stuff. It's like I feel like we don't die as humans because of old age. I feel like we die because we're stewing in our own wastes.
That's a good point. It is. It's not even natural to be able to eat at all times. It's not natural. Back in the day,
No.
like for thousands of years, millions of years, however many you want to call it, like when people were evolving, like you couldn't afford to just have food laying there. It would go bad. And some days you would go out and you would hunt, and
Yeah,
the hunts would be unsuccessful. Like it's unnatural to always
well,
be eating. You have
absolutely.
to go hungry.
You can think of it as the original consumerism. when you eat more than you actually need, simply because there's emotions involved, and we tend to get a lot of comfort, right, in things that are outside of ourselves, and for some people it's food. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's a limitation. It can be a limitation. And I think that, yeah, like literally to be the healthiest, we should all eat once a day. I know that sounds kind of extreme for most, but in reality, we're an air gas engine that runs on air. Like, that's our number one food. And that, like, just the whole medical establishment has set up like a lot of erroneous ideas based upon like the new medical establishment, Western medicine, that are like based on falsities, and a lot of the like traditional cultural teachings of health with different cultures have shown us some insight into that. But yeah, it's kind of gate kept. The truth is gate kept, as we know, being Hexicans.
Yep.
These
Like,
things are important, especially for us people who sit in here, because poor health habits, even though we all have them, they're not like they don't scale well with crypto gains.
No answer. Agreed. Agreed.
I
we
think
have an answer for that, guys. We have Matty Allen. Okay, jeez. Just kidding.
I mean, really, it comes down. I mean, there's like yogis and stuff, that have proven that like you don't really need much food and you can live to a ripe old age and be completely flexible and without pain. But it's the rare individual who doesn't have to go to those lengths, but can still live that same reality. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve, is like how to live an extraordinary life, um, uh, seemingly in a common way.
Yeah, people weren't kidding when they were talking about food as medicine.
So true. I
True.
I was
All
I can speak of this a little bit because I was a
right.
raw foodist for 8 years, like a full-on Nazi. Like, that soy sauce isn't raw. It's not nama shoyu. I won't eat it. That's like 7 years, and it was great. It was the clearest I've ever been, but it was a tough place to be, because breaking bread with people spiritually that's a hard thing to let go of.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There has to be some compromise, and I think that if you do decide to if you do decide to stop eating animals, for example, you got to be a little bit rational about it. It's fine to not eat animal, like it's fine to not eat meat if you don't want to eat all the factory farmed meat, for example, all the uh,
Absolutely. I know where you're
antibiotic,
going
like
with this one.
all these things. But for example, if you go to someone's, you kind of have to make it up in your head. Like if someone invites you to their home and they actually hunted the animal, like if they did something like that and they offer you the meat, then maybe it's a good compromise because the meat is much better. Something
Yeah,
like that. There has to be
absolutely.
some sort of balance there.
I should say that I do believe in raw food, and I do think that, you know, that our food is perfect just how it is. And like fruit is ripened by the sun, like the oven is the sun. And that it's potentially, if we're eating all fresh food, that it's provided perfectly. And anything that man touches, we pretty much destroy. So like, let's at least not touch our food so much. So I do, and I've looked into the science of enzymes, and it's freaking amazing. Like literally, like it's the fountain of youth is our enzyme potential, and we're born with all certain enzyme potential, and once that enzyme potential is exhausted, then our pancreas no longer works and can't act as like our main immune system, you know machine gun. And yeah, we just like go downhill. But I do think the vegan thing is wrong. I think that like having a raw animal fat in your diet is extremely important, especially to like brain development and just brain health. So having a saturated fat that comes from an animal that ideally is on pasture, that it's getting activated compound from the tips of the blades of the grass, which is like the golden oil that's harvested, that essentially is what buzz or ghee is. And I mean, really, it comes down to minerals. But yeah, I think that it's been a journey for sure. You know, I started when I was a teenager. I turned vegetarian and like just traveled all through all of the different like self discovery modes of eating. And yeah, I feel like I'm not extreme anymore. That's important. But I've
Yeah,
come
I'm
away
very
with some good truth, I think.
fundamentalist. No
Yeah.
fundamentalism.
What were you saying, Exodan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. I was saying no fundamentalism here.
I was just gonna say
I
that
mean,
I've been a vegan as well. I'm still a vegetarian, but the type of vegetarian that I explained earlier. Like if somebody invites me to their home and have good meat to
Tuesday.
offer, I'll eat it. But I don't eat like meat just for the taste or just for fun. I eat it out of
But
respect and if it's actually good, you know.
yeah, I think it's a survival food, and it can be good for when we're feeling depleted. But I think like historically, if you believe like the history of some of the Bible stuff, like with the flood, like after the flood, it was like, okay, you guys no longer have just the garden to eat from. You can, because like all the plants are dead, like you can eat meat. But then it like was never switched back to like the paradise eating style, which was eating from the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Sebi is very interesting in that regard. Dr. Sebi also was promoting raw stuff and fasting very much, and also herbs, all kinds of alkaline herbs. He was very
Someone that
heavy.
blow your mind being a European. His name was Arnold Ehret and came from Germany, and he was part of the Naturamenschen movement, which is the original German natural people that came over and basically started the whole hippie movement and back to the land kind of movement in the U.S. in the early 1900s. And his Arnold Ehret created this thing called a mucusless dialing system, where he basically defined whether or not a food creates a residue after it's eaten or if it doesn't. And he saw a direct correlation to that and the encumbrances that it has on the lymph system, and basically did like multiple fastings and would basically use the fruits and the vegetables in combination properly to achieve what he wanted to. Like if he wanted to speed up the cleansing in his body, he would mostly predominantly eat watery fruit or fast. But like to slow it down, the other way would be to just cook vegetables, starchless vegetables. And when you do that, then you're slowing it down, but you're not intoxing anything. So then basically you can be your own physician and either speed up or slow down your cleansing of your acid associated toxins that are in your body. And he did some crazy feats. Like you look at the pictures of before and after, he was like discharged from the army because he had like Bright's disease, and he went through all this fasting and fruit diet, and literally he looks like a completely different person. Like he turned the clock back 20, 30 years. It was crazy.
What was
um
his name?
to just
Oh,
see that, you know. And he drew a lot of conclusions to like holy, you know, to people, um like spiritual prophets and masters, and how that's why they did that, because you basically like you have to master the body in order to master the spirit and the soul, you know. And like just drawing that correlation was fascinating to me.
yep. Cool. What was his name, please, again? Arnold?
Arnold Ehret, and it's spelled Ehret, and he created a rational fasting and mucusless diet healing system. But he did like these feats of strength where he fasted for 49 days, and then he broke his fast, and then he like walked for like 4 days straight. Crazy. I mean, he
Damn.
basically was, because he was a doctor. He was a PhD. Like he had a certain level of like rigorous testing on his own body that, like, in my opinion, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's got almost the whole truth. Like what he discovered is pretty much almost the whole truth. And yeah, it's just either eat more fruits or eat more vegetables.
Yeah.
The cleaner you get, the less you have to eat, and the more you can just eat fruit.
I respect extreme people like that. It's really admirable.
Well, the biggest change that I noticed about not eating meat is that my character, my personality became much softer, and even my speech was much softer. And when I spoke to people that still were eating meat, they were like very very short and yeah, just talking more aggressively, and it's and that was a very big difference that I
I don't
saw.
know, man. I know some pretty aggressive retards who don't eat meat.
Yeah, but then the
Yeah,
retard stuff comes back. Yeah?
I think that that's not necessarily the case. Of course, that can be the case for yourself, but I think overall, like, yeah, just generalizations and just are limiting no matter what. But in particular, that one, yeah, there's plenty of aggressive vegans and people like, even like, it's said that what comes out of your mouth is more important than what goes in your mouth.
Yes, exactly. Wow, thank you. Yes, yes, yes. It's not that goes
Even,
into the mouth pollutes it. It's what comes out.
yeah, I mean, we have two diets. We eat food for our body, but we take in information for our mind, you know?
Exactly, exactly. The first food for that's what I always tell parents. When I meet parents and I get to talk about the children, I always say the first food that you give your children is your thoughts and your feelings that you emit. Only then comes the physical food.
Yo, Rich, I have a quick question for you. So you said something about the body needing butter or just some sort of fat, at least some sort of animal fat. And I've experienced this many, many times, like in cycles where I just do not consume any like eggs or milk products and stuff like that. But then over time, my body feels like it needs some butter. And when I do consume butter, it does something. Do you have any idea of what happens in the background, like when you starve yourself from these animal fats?
Yeah, I think perhaps I do. And maybe this is just one aspect of it, but I think it all comes back to minerals. And I think the animal fats from either cold water fish, I think all animal fats actually, but in particular with ruminating animals, there's something called the activator X compound. It's related to vitamin K, and it's a catalyst for mineral absorption. So I think that it like affects our liver and it creates it promotes more bile. That's one action that it has, but I do think that it actually is like a certain compound in that animal fat that goes into nourishing our brain, I believe. So I've seen a lot of vegans. I was vegan myself for like freaking 10 years. Like I became emaciated. Um, and fortunately I didn't do much damage to myself. But I've seen people go deeper than that. And I do think the paradise diet essentially is eating from the garden, fresh fruits and fresh herbs, and having the milk and the honey. And that's it.
Yeah,
That's the one.
I agree with that.
Rick, ask you a quick question about Icosa or Anhedron and Hex. If
Go
you were
ahead,
going to
bro.
only buy one, sorry,
No, go
No,
ahead.
go
Go
on.
ahead.
okay, sorry to interrupt. I thought, so if you were only going to buy one thing, this is mainly for Rich, but anybody else, if you could only buy one thing, Hex, Hedron, or Hedron or Icosa, and since Icosa is connected to the T shares, would it would you just go for Icosa?
I would say Hedron and Icosa. I would say Hedron maybe if you're looking for more short to midterm. I would keep it liquid because I think the price appreciation in Hedron is more than Icosa, but the yield for Icosa before the just after the auction begin is going to be kind of like a big payday event. Like you're going to want to be getting that yield. So I would say kind of both. I just I try to just equal myself out in everything because there's a lot of different game theories as to how it can be played beneficially. But I think in the end, it's all gonna do well.
Cool. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, I wanted to also add something about the food. Dr. Sebi, he also always was telling that the, the best foods to eat are actually the foods that come out of nature like that without processing. And he was claiming that a lot of foods that we know and that we eat today, that they are actually uh, genetically modified in the sense that it was cultivated to be able to be eaten by people, like bananas and stuff. And the only, for example, bananas, the only bananas that we can eat that come straight from nature are the small ones, for example. Lemon also is something that was cultivated to be able to be eaten by people, and that the lemon, right, so the lime.
I I think there's some credence to that. I think mostly it has more to do with minerals and cultivation of the soil and depletion of the minerals in certain food. But like there's some credence to that. Like with Kirlian photography, I've seen wild food definitely test a lot higher and more electrically charged, which electrical charge in food is related to minerals, right? Like mineral ratios. And that's the same thing in our cells. So it's like, well, we just want to bathe our cells in proper solution, right? We just want to make sure that solution that the cells are in is like in the perfect pH balance. And I think, yeah, absolutely, fruit is the best. I don't think that we have to go so extreme to be eating all wild food. So, like, I think
No, no, indeed.
I think the relationship between people and like as farmers, because genetically, so yeah, like it's a symbiotic relationship the way I see it. Like
Yes.
even with livestock, right, and how we bred them for certain characteristics. Like it's basically the seed of civilization. Um, we've been able to think beyond just feeding ourselves because we've come up with some ingenious ideas to create more calories closer by, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm kind of dressed. But
No, 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 no.
yeah, it's there's never. Here's the other thing is there's like, I think everyone's chemical makeup is different, and I think therefore one size doesn't always fit all for certain stages of your life. So I think you first have to determine like what you're wanting to eat for. Are you wanting to eat for power, and are you a very powerful like business